we need to talk about Abe and the connections to the Unification Church. Multiple people have asked me if I could address that on this show, so I'm going to do that as best I can. I want to state for the record that I'm recording this on Sunday, the 10th of July at 4:45 p.m. in London, and I'm going to try to stick to the facts as we know them right now. And by the way, for anyone who's new here, my name is Elgin Strait. I grew up in the Moonies, and I now run a podcast where I talk to other people who also grew up in the Moonies and expose the manipulation, abuse, and hypocrisy of the organization. And I think that's very relevant to what's happened in Japan. And I have to say, I can sympathize with the anger and rage of the killer, Tetsuya Yamagami. So for those who haven't heard, a few days ago, Shinzo Abe, the previous prime minister of Japan, was killed in broad daylight in Japan by someone who made a gun, a homemade gun, and media reports subsequently came out and said that the motive of the killing was due to displeasure with Abe for his connections to a religious group. At that point, speculation abounded that it had something to do with the Unification Church and the Moonies, and that speculation continued, and it wasn't really clear, and it isn't really clear exactly what the deal is here, although it has now been confirmed that yes, the religious group in question is the Unification Church. The mainline Unification Church has issued a sort of standard thoughts and prayers. Fucking bullshit, by the way. If you're ever saying thoughts and prayers, you know you're the bad guy. 100%. Never a time when the bad guy hasn't been the one who's saying that shit. Anyway, the mainline Unification Church issued a sort of standard thoughts and prayers response. Didn't mention anything about the reasoning behind it. And then Sanctuary Church, the splinter group run by Sean Moon, who coincidentally or completely not coincidentally is in Japan right now trying to rally support and maybe trying to take over the mainline Unification Church, although it's not really clear. But he's in Japan right now. They've issued a statement saying that the killer of Abe was not part of Sanctuary Church, meaning that he would have been part of the mainline church. The news reports also say that his mother was recruited into the cult after he was born, so he wasn't born into it. And the storyline goes something like, unfortunately, this guy's dad, I think, passed away when he was a kid, leaving his mother a widow. And at some point when he was a kid, his mother was somehow approached and coerced into joining the Unification Church. So this kid, for those who've been listening to the show, was what the Unification Church would call a so-called Jacob's child, someone who doesn't have the pure blood lineage that someone who was born directly into the church would have, and that comes with a whole host of difficulties associated with it, and we talk about that extensively on my show. But the real thing here is the exploitation, I think, the financial exploitation. This is what I think the world needs to wrap its head around, because none of this is going to make sense unless you understand this, and it's something that we talk about on my show. We haven't really explored the Japan angle in full. That's something I would love to do at some point, but fundamentally, the Unification Church, God, where do I even fucking begin? Okay, so you don't even think of it as a church. This is rule. You're starting from the get-go. You're completely fucking misunderstanding it, because it's not a church. So to really understand what's going on here, there's a few key components. Number one is the structure of the organization, which is, this is not a religion. This is a constellation of front groups that serve to funnel money and power to the Moon family and hide under the protections that religions enjoy. That's the first thing to understand. The second thing to understand is how this fucking Kraken operates. Here's how it fucking works. They exploit their members tremendously financially. And what that looks like is a multitude of different layers of pressure placed on members to contribute financially. For us in the West, I grew up in the U.S., our parents were expected to give 10% of their pre-tax income to the Unification Church. In Japan, as far as I understand, it's 30% of your pre-tax income every month is meant to go to this organization. That's just a fucking start, okay? But then every fucking month, They're asking for more money to build this building for this fucking Providence. This sort of all the fucking time they're asking for more fucking money. And then on top of that, they do effectively modern day indulgences. So the theology of the church is that you, as a living, breathing human being, bear the responsibility for the sins of your ancestors, and it's your responsibility to so-called liberate them from their sinfulness in the spirit world. And the way you do that, surprise, surprise, is by paying the Unification Church money per generation of ancestors. And guess what? That well never runs dry. They can always come back and be like, hey, you did 100, now it's time for the next 100 generations. And that's just one of many ways of pure financial exploitation that, unfortunately, members are coerced into. And the Unification Church has a history of exploiting Japanese members worse than members in other countries, for a variety of reasons that I won't go into now. But fundamentally, it's a massively, massively exploitative organization. And here's what happens with the money. Some of it goes back to the Moon families so they can have gold-plated toilets and snort, cocaine every fucking minute of the day through their nose or whatever dumb, stupid shit they want to do. That's what part of it does. But then part of it goes to the front groups, and the front groups recruit high-caliber, heavy hitters to come and speak at their events. They pay them speaking fee. They pay them that money. So the money comes from this coercion. And it goes into the hands of people like Shinzo Abe, who speak at Moonie events. Just some kind of glowing, innocuous, hey, like world peace type of shit. Nothing really substantial. They fly to these places on the Moonies' dime, which was taken from these coerced people. They're paid speaking fees to be there. And then what the Moonies do is they say, hey, look, Shinzo Abe spoke at our event. Look, the politicians of the world, they're all bowing down to us. They believe in our providence. They believe that Reverend Moon is the Messiah. So the presence of these people is used to further the cycle of abuse. So all these people have committed two great sins in my view. Number one, they've taken human trafficked money, more or less. Number two, they're furthering the cycle of shackling people into this because their mere presence at these organizations is presented as proof that God is working through the organization. So imagine being this guy Tetsuya. You're living a kind of normal life, probably still pretty hard since your dad died. And then all of a sudden your mother is approached by this organization. You get pulled into it where you're looked at as effectively a second-class citizen because you don't have the pure blood that some of the other kids around you theoretically have. And second of all, you see, and this is what they're reporting in the papers over there, they're saying that it was his anger was driven by the financial exploitation of his mother. And guess what? I fucking believe that, and that hits fucking hard. So this guy came out of a kind of normal life, and then he saw his mother financially ruined, bankrupt by this predatory cult. That's what happened to this guy's mother and to his family and to his life. And I can empathize with the anger, quite honestly. And that anger is what's driving me to do this podcast. I'm not condoning violence, but I am saying that I understand that anger. And here's why Abe is not an unreasonable target of that anger. Here's why. It's because the places where one might go to report a predatory organization like the Unification Church, think about where you might go to report that. You might go to your local minister of parliament. You might hope that someone high up in the government might be willing to help you with that. You might think, hey, maybe I'll talk to someone in the media and maybe they'll be able to help me with that and expose some of this bullshit. Well, guess what? The Moonies have intentionally embedded themselves in politics and the media. And I'm going to show you a little bit of what that looks like right now. This is the website of the Universal Peace Federation, one of many Moonie front groups. And here we have, plain as day, a video Shinzo Abe, this is from 2021, Shinzo Abe speaking at one of these events. And I'm just going to read the beginnings of this so you kind of understand where this is going. Good morning, I am Shinzo Abe, former Prime Minister of Japan. It is an honor for me to speak together with my good friend, former U.S. President Donald Trump, at this rally of hope, hosted by UPF, Universal Peace Federation, in the presence of heads of state, parliamentarians, and religious leaders from 150 countries, addressing today's problems and engaging in dialogue on how to create a better world. Skipping a sentence here, but then I would just want to say, today, this is Abe. Today, in honoring Dr. Hak Jahan Moon and all of you, I would like to express my profound thanks for your tireless efforts through UPF in resolving disputes in the world, especially in relation to the peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. So the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, is honoring the leader of the exploitative group that ruined this man's life, that bankrupted his family. I can see where the anger would come from. I'm going to dive a little deeper into this website. So if we go a little further, this page outlines just some of the speakers that were at one of these events. And this is going to give you a sense of who attends these fucking things. Cambodian Prime Minister Samdech Hun Sen, His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, former Secretary General of the United Nations. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, former Prime Minister Donald Trump. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. His Excellency Jose Manuel Barroso. European Commission President and current chairman at Goldman Sachs. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence. His Excellency Federico Franco, President of Paraguay. Pastor Paulo White Kane, spiritual advisor to Mr. Trump. His Excellency Jimmy Morales, Guatemala President. Gloria Arroyo, Philippines President. Jim Rogers, the famous investor. I was shocked when I saw this. Jim Rogers, the famous investor, was there. Other February 13 speakers included the Honorable Richard Cheney, U.S. Vice President, so Dick Cheney. Yes, that Dick Cheney. Dan Quayle. The Right Honorable Stephen Harper, the Canadian Prime Minister for 2006 to 2015. Mahinda Rajapaksa, Sri Lankan Prime Minister. Deve Gowda, India Prime Minister, till 97. Her Excellency, or His Excellency, Maithripala Sirisena, Sri Lanka President. Michel Temer, Brazilian President until 2018. Anthony Carmona, Trinidad and Tobago President. Lenny Robredo, Philippines Vice President. Madam Adi Naila Tikau, First Lady of Fiji, 2009 to 2015. KP Sharma Oli, Nepali Prime Minister, 15 to 16 and 18 to 21. Syed Yousaf Raza Gilani, Pakistani Prime Minister, 08 to 12. Zazana Gusmo, East Timor President. Macky Sall, Senegal President. Carlos Villanova, Sao Tome and Principe President. George Weah, Liberia President. Goodluck Jonathan, Nigerian President, 2010 to 2015. Adolfo Diao, Burkina Faso Prime Minister, till 2014. Paul Mba, Gabon Prime Minister, 2009 to 2012. Albin Kurti, Kosovo Prime Minister. Ilir Meta, Albania President. Romano Prodi, Italian Prime Minister, till 08. And European Commission President, till 04. Dominic de Villepin, France Prime Minister. Maria Aznar, Spain Prime Minister from 96 to 2004. And that's not even everyone. That's not even everyone. Can I just fucking punctuate this with that's not even everyone? And everyone whose name I just wrote, they're fucking in on this. They take money. They know where the money comes from. They know it comes from this cult. And they speak at these events. And their presence is used to further that cycle of abuse. And I'm not even fucking done yet. This was one goddamn event in the beginning of 2022 that Abe happened to be at. Let's dig a little deeper into this website, shall we? Okay, I'm going to scroll up here. Let's go to the primary associations associated with this website. Okay, let's look at this. Parliamentarians for Peace, IAPP. Parliamentary, blah, 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 a little bit of verbiage. Okay, let's look here. Think Tank 2022 Forum Executive Summary. Let's see who was here. Who do you think? Okay, these two folks work for the org. This one I thought was quite interesting. The Honorable Yoshiaki Harada, a member of Japan's parliament. A sitting member of parliament speaking at one of these front group events. The Honorable Glyn Ford from the United Kingdom, a former member of the European Parliament. Dr. Yevgeny Kim, a leading researcher at the Center for Korean Studies. The Honorable Nina Novakova, member of the Parliament in the Czech Republic. Reverend Dr. William A. McComish, Dean Emeritus of St. Peter's Cathedral in Geneva, Switzerland. A few others. This woman works for Youth for Peace, which is a Mooney front group. Nikolai Kizimov from Russia, the director of the Great Nations Spiritual and Moral Center. Leyla Hasandeak Dapo from Turkey, a psychologist and psychotherapist. The Venerable Dr. Michel Talchan from France, the president of Cercle de Réflexion des Nations. I don't really know what that is. Oh, here's one. Ambassador Christopher Hill from the United States, a professor of international relations at Columbia University and former U.S. ambassador to the Republic of Korea. Oh, and here's this guy again. The Right Honorable Stephen Harper, Prime Minister of Canada, 2006 to 2015. Then we go on. Oh, these fuckers. H.E. Kjell Magne Bondevik, the Prime Minister of Norway, 97 to 2000 and 2001 to 2005. H.E. Anthony Carmona, the President of Trinidad and Tobago. Doug Bando from the United States, a senior fellow at the Cato Institute. The Honorable Salvador Nasrallah, the Vice President of Honduras. Dr. Nicholas Swanstrom from Sweden, the Executive Director of the Institute for Security and Development Planning. Jesus fucking Christ, this list just goes fucking on and on and on. I can't even. Dr. Yulia Karlamova, an associate professor at the Russian University of Transport. So here's the academic component coming in. I can't even fucking, this list just fucking keeps going. Dr. Colette Mazzucchelli from the United States, an adjunct associate professor at New York University, specializing in conflict resolution, radicalization, and religion. H.E. Elsie Christofia, the First Lady of Cyprus. Professor Anna Grichting from Switzerland, a professor of architecture and landscape urbanism. God. Dr. Hung Soon Park, a professor and the vice president of the UN Association of the Republic of Korea. Dr. Raghavan Sitharaman, the CEO of Doha Bank, a global investment bank that is active in India, China, and Europe. Wow. Just skimming through here. I don't even know where to begin. Oh, and then we scroll down here. Okay, this page sort of amalgamates a few different pieces of the front group puzzle. What you'll see here, okay, this is the International Media Association for Peace. So here's the thing. The politicians are fucking in on this corrupt game. Well, guess what? Who else are you going to turn to? The media? Well, you might struggle because a lot of them are tainted by this bullshit too. They're taking that money and they're speaking at these fucking events too. Here we go. And it's because it has this innocuous name, International Media Association for Peace. These people get these invites to these conferences, they attend. Maybe they don't even know what's happening until they get there. But after they've attended, guess what? Their name's already on the list. They're tainted. And the odds of them speaking out against what's happened to them is deteriorated massively. And are they going to be writing articles about the exploitation? Nope, they're going to keep their fucking mouths shut. Here are some of the people that fall into that category. Rita Payne, former Asia editor for BBC World News. Young Jin Oh, the president and publisher of the Korean Times. Dr. Felix Petrovich Kim from Russia, head of the Board of Trustees of the Russian information service known as Korean Radio. Chad O'Carroll from the UK, the chief executive officer of the Seoul-based news and information service Korea Risk Group, NK News. Ambassador Warwick Morris, former ambassador of the United Kingdom to South Korea. All these fucking people. Then here's another front group, International Association of Arts and Culture for Peace, IAACP. It fucking keeps going. It goes on and on and on and on and on. This was one fucking event of thousands that they have hosted. I want to reiterate again, every single name that I have just mentioned is just as guilty as Shinzo Abe of lending credence to the Mooney organization with their presence, and of, at a minimum, accepting travel and entertainment expenses from them to appear at these events, and quite probably accepting speaking fees to attend these events. And a lot of the people attend more than one. So I say again, if you're Tetsuya, your mother's been coerced into joining this group, what do you do? What do you turn? You're angry. I'm fucking angry too. Again, I'm not going to be shooting guns, but I am shooting fucking words here. I'm angry as fuck, and everyone on my show is angry as fuck about the fact that all of the institutions that should be protecting people from this exploitative, predatory cult are in fact corrupted by the cult. So where do you go? Where do you turn to? What do you do then? I don't support the violence, but I understand the anger. I understand the anger that was directed towards Abe. And I'm hopeful that this show and the work that others are doing to expose this fucking horrific organization might help to bring it down in ways that don't involve violence. Hey, okay, I'm back just for a second here. The reason being, I'm now recording this more than 24 hours later. It's now nearly 9 p.m. in London on Monday, the 11th of July, and a few things have occurred. Number one, there was a press conference held today by the Unification Church, during which their leader, this is from the Japan Times article today, Tomohiro Tanaka, head of the Japan branch of the Unification Church, told a televised news conference Monday that the group was aware of the mother's bankruptcy but denied forcing her to continue donations. Yeah, they deny forcing. But they're ignoring the fact that the coercion is extreme. They've convinced people that if they don't give the money that the church asks for, then they're going to burn in hell and their ancestors are going to spit at them and piss at them and shit on them. Literally, this is the fucking things that they tell their church members. That's what's going to happen to them when they go to the spirit world. So they're coerced. They're coerced from the beginning of their membership journey into thinking that in order for them to go to heaven, they need to pay the church whatever it tells them to pay. And these fuckers have the gall to say that they're not forcing this shit. They are forcing the fuck out of it. These lying fucking motherfuckers. Oh, so yeah, that happened today. It also states that, this is from the article, as for Abe's ties to the group, Tanaka said the late former prime minister had been close to a, quote, friendship group, unquote, which he differentiated from the organization itself, but said he was never a member or advisor to the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. Here we go. This is more evidence of the many-headed hydra, the hall of mirrors that this organization hides under. Tanaka continues, this is my speculation, but I think Yamagami, the killer, didn't distinguish between our group and the friendship group. He thought that because the founders were the same, everything looks the same. His group and the related groups, Tanaka added, have separate purposes and visions. If he understood that, he wouldn't have seen them as connected to us, he said. No. Yamagami was right. Absolutely, they're all connected. They all funnel money and power right back up to Moon and his family. Yamagami's interpretation of this was spot on, and his anger was not unwarranted. And the Unification Church, I'm going to guess, is going to continue to lie through their teeth about this shit. A couple other notes here. I want to say that there are many, many, many more ties between Abe and Japanese politics in general in the Unification Church. I haven't covered all of them here because I wanted to talk about the overarching structures and how they're connected and how this goes beyond Abe, but there's a lot more connections that Abe has to the Unification Church, and other people have done great work reporting on that. The final thing is, when I look back at the previous part of this video that I recorded yesterday, for the second half of it, the video on the screen share was centered around this woman who was a minister, like a prime minister or some sort of civil servant or politician, in the Czech Republic. That was an error I made while I was recording it, just to have the screen still showing that. I still stand by everything that I said there, and at the end of the day, that woman, she spoke at one of these events. She took the money. I'm not sorry that her name was stuck on that screen for the 5 minutes when I'm talking about all this. So, sorry, lady, deal with it. You take money from the devil, you get lumped in with him when people like me start calling you out. Thank you, everyone. Take care of yourselves.